All right. Welcome to another episode of the Dad at Arms podcast. I am your host, Dad at Arms. I also go by Colt. And with me today is a really cool guest, Adam McCombs of the Battle Ram blog. How's it going, Adam?
I'm good. I'm good. How you doing, Colt?
Good.
Thanks
So,
for having me
for
on.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining me. For people who are watching out there and might not know what it is you do, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of fill people in?
Yeah, so the main thing that I do is I created the Battle Ram blog. So it's started at that in 2016. Just kind of snowballed into a huge just repository of articles, mostly about the vintage figures, but also I go into a lot of, sort of concept design and, just kind of a resource for old, scans of old catalogs and magazines and things like that. It's so that's kind of like my main thing that I do in the He-Man She-Ra community, but I've also contributed to a number of magazines. I sort of consulted on the Netflix Toys That Made Us He-Man documentary, and the most recently, I contributed to the Pixel Dan toy guidebook, which was fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's great. That was gonna be one of my questions later on, but let's go ahead and talk about that now.
Yeah,
Your experiences with contributing to things in kind of more of an official capacity.
yeah.
How was that experience?
It's been really great. It's been fun. It's sort of something like, you can kind of check off, like, something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. And it kind of came in bits and pieces. So specifically for the toy guide project. So how that started was, so Pixel Dan is the primary author, but he worked very closely with Val Staples on it as
Hmm.
well. They did a lot. They did conceptualizing, what's going to be included in the book. They flew around the country. Well, first they had to find the collectors who had all of the toys that they could photograph, and they flew around, bringing all their kit with the white backgrounds and the lights and everything. So they were really kind of partners on that. Val would be kind of like the project manager, and Pixel Dan is the primary author. So, but it was such a huge project, and I kind of knew Val and worked with him before, so I was basically brought on to help out. Really, to the beginning, it was just contributing interviews. So I'd already done a number of interviews on my blog with people like Mark Taylor, Rebecca Taylor, Ted Mayer, Rudy Obrero, people who worked on the vintage toy line and the vintage packaging. So basically the assignment was, okay, we'd like to use those interviews, but also we've got a list of another, I don't know how many others, maybe 8 or 9 other people that they wanted me to interview. So some of the marketing people who worked at Mattel, one of the people who headed up She-Ra. So I that was kind of the first part of that project, is just going out, interviewing a bunch of people, getting that all set up, making sure they were okay with what I had recorded, and transcribed from the interviews. And it kind of snowballed. It was just because it's such a huge project. It's a lot for 1 or 2 people to do.
Hmm.
So Pixel Dan had written all of the vintage material, but they were looking like, okay, here's the layout, and we've got this 3 or 4 paragraph write up on the toys, and we've got the picture layout. It'd be great to have fun facts about the toy. So they asked me, okay, could you come up with some fun facts about the vintage toys? So I sort of did that, put that together, and then it was like, okay, we're running out of time here. So do you know anything about Masters of the Universe classics? Which I did. I was, collected them. So Pixel Dan had written, I don't know what percentage of it, but I got a pretty good chunk of the toys that I basically did the write-ups for. ended up being like a lot of like the Ultimates and a lot of the Super 7 stuff. I remember I did the laser power He-Man, laser light Skeletor. Maybe, I don't know, could be half of them or 40% of them, something like that. So I ended up writing those. One of the other things was because there was so much to do in the book, Dan didn't have time to, finish up the classics. He was doing all these other, all the other sections. So I picked up a good, 40-50% of the write-ups for the classics toys, which is fun because my blog covers a little bit of classics, but it's really mostly vintage. So that was an opportunity to sort of really think a little bit more carefully about the classics toys and what the influences were for them. A lot of them they draw from a lot of interesting places, like could be the card back art, different could be the vintage toy, different pieces of artwork. There's a little bit of 2000X. So I ended up doing a good number of those write-ups. And then I had suggested adding something that was kind of already existed on my blog. It was a timeline. It's basically, I collected a lot of dates from legal filings, like copyright filings and trademarks. I went through like the Power and Honor Foundation catalog, any of the sort of concept art that has dates on it. So I put together sort of a comprehensive timeline from, the very early concept art to when the toys started to come out. And so Dan and Val's team, sort of took that data that I'd put together and put it into a nice graphic. And that was something else that made it into the book.
That's awesome. When you're, and this involves your other work with, just what you do, with your blog itself, but the work that goes into like finding all these materials and these sources and even down to the documents, like the legal filings and stuff like that. I mean, that's a lot of work. Like we were talking earlier, like I have a background in journalism and I know how time consuming and tedious that kind of work can be when you're trying to find those things. And even when it's doing something fun that you love, like with He-Man and She-Ra related things, what was your kind of process for being able to find those things? And did you have to reach out to different, I guess, foundations or people themselves, or is it mostly kind of public record?
It's mostly public record. You can search copyright and trademark databases; those exist online. The concept art that came from like I said, the Power and Honor Foundation book, but also art that I'd been sent by Ted Mayer had some dates on it that I included there. And I did most of that work. It was prior to the book.
Okay.
So I didn't have like a looming deadline, but I remember when I did it, I was just like extremely fascinated because there was this sort of this untapped resource that nobody had looked into. Like, okay, this stuff, exists in these government, offices somewhere. So just finding that, making sense of it, making it into a chronological picture, that was huge. It was fun for me. It's like super nerdy. It's not, not everybody would take the time to do that, but it was exciting to me. So I built that over time. I think I just started out with trademarks and then added all the, other different layers to it later. I've even updated it more recently. I've added, I went through newspapers.com and looked at what's the very first newspaper ad that I could find for each individual toy. And I think that helped even more than some of the legal stuff, because some of the legal filings, they're a little fuzzy. Like they might file trademarks on a bunch of items at once, and you don't necessarily get a clear picture from that, like when it came out. But I think if you find the earliest newspaper ad, that's probably a pretty clear indicator. it probably came out within, a couple of weeks of whatever earliest date you could find.
Okay. Oh, that's fascinating. Um, so you said you kind of started this back in 2016, and you do the blog. What would you call yourself? I guess I've always just kind of referred to you as like a master's historian or a master's scholar. I think that fits pretty well, but what do you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, I try to approach it. I mean, I don't have, a degree in history or anything like that, but I do try to approach it pretty critically. I mean, some of it can be critical, some of it's just, celebrating He-Man, but when it comes to, getting the facts, figuring out what came when, figuring out who did what, I do try to approach it like a historian. And, if you can get primary sources and multiple attestation and all that good stuff, that's, so I do try to make it something. The ultimate goal is this is a resource that anybody can go to, and they can, it'll help whatever if it's just your own personal, you want to learn this stuff. If you've got your own project that you're doing. I know the Netflix people had reached out to me precisely because they'd founded the blog and were using it as a resource.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to, chat with me just to get more information. So kind of, like a, just something where you can go to and find all this information about He-Man history. I find it fascinating. I know a lot of other people do too.
I think that's what I appreciate the most about what you've done with it is it feels very academic in nature, and there's a lot of attention to detail, and you take the time to cite your sources very well, and I think that's important when, doing anything that's worth researching. I think having that academic mindset is really phenomenal. And so, as somebody who looks at it and enjoys reading through it, like, I think I'm a nerd for sources cited. And so I really appreciate that. It's a lot of fun. So out of all these projects that you worked on, do you have any that have been your favorite?
I mean, just in terms of like, if I'm going to point to one, it's going to be, the Pixel Dan toy guide. Just because it's such it's kind of a landmark. It's something everybody is picking up. Everybody's got a copy of this and using it to. Mm-hmm. It doesn't go, because it's a book and there's, limited sort of space on the page and limited number of pages they can do, even though it's huge. Right. It's not going to go into the same depth as my articles, but it is, something that is accessible. You can just pick it up. You can look through. If you're a collector, you've got, even if it's just like surface level, like I want to buy a vintage Saurod, and what came with Saurod and what should I look for? You can use it on that level, but there's a lot of deeper information there. So I'm really proud of that, how it came out, and that I was able to contribute to it. But I mean, everything that I've worked on has been, fun, and I've always felt like, it's really nice that I get to do this. This is, it's been an honor. Like, so there's the Netflix thing. I've worked with the Mundo Masters people, the Spain-based magazine. They've done a lot of my articles, sort of translated into Spanish for that market. I've done one or two things that I've written just for them as well. So that's been fun. I did a little bit. So there's that recent DK book that came out. Mm-hmm. It was almost, a lot of it was kind of recycled from the Dark Horse books, which apparently they got permission from Mattel to do that. But I didn't contribute to it. I did get to look at it, and like, I gave them some suggestions, like, hey, this is, this is slightly wrong. You might want to fix that, or, just a little bit of fact checking. So that's been fun. But yeah, I mean, the book, outside the blog, the book is probably my favorite project.
That's awesome. when you're doing your research and you're tracking down on this information, is most of the information that you kind of have a general sense about, and then you're just kind of going into clarify and confirm?
A lot of it is
blind?
Yeah, it's kind of depends on what it is. There's some things like I'm working on what is it? Beam blaster and artillery right now,
Okay.
which isn't a toy that I had. Sometimes I'll even I'll forget the research that I've done before, or even if it's like an interview that I did, and I'll have to research my own archives. But over the years, I've also saved interviews that were put onto He-Man.org or other podcasts, or different like scans of articles, or so I try to get pick up everything that could be related. Like with Beam Blaster, I kind of forgot there'd been some of it, the way the toy is designed, it's actually very similar to what they had been thinking of for like the live action TV show. So that's a connection I had to remember that was there, like that sort of light activated sensor feature. So some of it's just going back and reminding myself of what I've researched previously.
Awesome. Do you ever just stumble across something that kind of like blows your mind that you didn't know before?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. I mean, I want to say, like, I know one of the things that sticks out to me, and this wasn't something that like I discovered, but just one of the major sort of surprises was when, I think this was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when those Lords of Power images came out.
Yeah.
From Andy Usi. He had his dad had gotten samples of the early prototypes, and he had sort of slide images. That was probably the biggest find that I've seen. And I immediately, had to write about it. Like it was up on my blog the next day. So that's probably been the one that blows my mind, because we hadn't seen some of that before. We'd seen, Skeletor and He-Man. We hadn't seen that version of Man-at-Arms. All of it made sense, because that Man-at-Arms, you see him in, kind of the mini comics, the sort of the design elements that you see there. The Beast Man was a huge surprise, because we'd seen that. We hadn't seen a physical prototype that looked like that. We had seen drawings from Mark Taylor, sort of the Beastman with the big long spikes around the shoulder armor.
Yeah.
But we hadn't seen it in that color. We hadn't seen a physical copy. The only sort of artifact that looked like that was from like the 1982 pop-up game. His face was on there, you could kind of see the armor. So it was kind of a mystery, and then it was like, oh, all of a sudden, like, oh, okay, that's where that came from, and this is, I wouldn't have expected that he'd actually gotten to a prototype of that design. I always thought it was just, you get all those different drawings, and then you've got sort of the regular Beast Man in physical form.
Awesome. Oh, that's cool. I guess like when you started doing this, I'm going to assume here, I guess, I'll just ask you straight out, like, what is your history with Masters of the Universe, and has it been something that you've been a fan of for a long time?
Yeah. So I got He-Man, got into it before the cartoon. I think it was either for my birthday or for Christmas, 1982. We got the first 4 figures. It probably was my birthday, because I don't remember it like Christmas stuff around, but it was, so we got, I got He-Man, Skeletor, Beastman, Man-at-Arms. And I just had never seen anything like that. I was just bowled away by it. I wasn't one of those kids who sort of bashes their toys together, I was really careful, and I was more like, I want to study every inch of this amazing you know, this toy. So I just remember just like looking through all the details on like He-Man's hair or the back of Skeletor's hood or Beastman's, his armor and his, the little spikes on his fist, and just kind of studying that. I could read, but I wasn't a strong reader. So I remember flipping through the mini comics, kind of getting a sense of the idea, but I wasn't, taking the time to actually read it at that age. So and so that I was huge into that from, up until probably to the end of 85. And then the 86 wave to me was a little bit like, oh, this isn't quite the same. This is a little bit off. I did like the Snake Men, but the others weren't quite catching my attention. But so I was big into it. And, you become a teenager and you kind of forget about all that stuff. And then kind of my first reintroduction was with the 2000 commemorative line. Like I don't know why I was in Toys R Us, but I went there and it's like there's a huge wall of just all these commemorative toys. My mom was with me for some reason. She bought me like the 5-pack with Prince Adam and He-Man and Skeletor, and so that was kind of my first, like, oh, okay, I can be into this again. But it didn't really take off until the classics line, when I didn't catch it at the beginning, but I caught it like in 2012. So from then on, I was really big into it. I was actively collecting. I had a son at the time. He and I were playing with toys together. So that kind of like, oh, I remember how much fun I had with this stuff when I was a kid. So I wanted to get it and play with him with the toys. And then, I would hang out at He-Man.org, and there'd be a lot of snippets of information everywhere, and I'd like basically saving the images, bookmarking all interviews I found, and so eventually it just kind of came together. Like I need to, like, if this isn't in any one place where you can find it, so I need to start putting together what I'm learning. That's how the blog took off.
That's awesome. Has there been any challenges along the way, in building the blog and, just kind of building this database that you have?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's just time. In the beginning I would just like be up late every night working on it. I know at one point there was just like, okay, I need to find a better way to host the material, just because I was running out of room on the free server. So figuring out hosting was a challenge. Making a lot of it was I would have to go back, like I would learn new things and go back, and I would want to update things too. I mean, it's just the thing about it is it's not, it's a passion project, so it's not like I've got any deadlines. I can do it as I want, but a lot of it is just my own perfectionism, and I have to, I learned something new, it's got to be updated then in like 4 different places where I talk about that topic.
Yeah. No, I know it just from using Twitter. Like I'll go back and see posts that I wrote, a year or something ago, and I'll see something that isn't quite right, and it irritates me to no end that I can't go in and edit that little piece, and without having to start a brand new, tweet or whatever.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can this is kind of a living document,
Yeah.
like you can go back and you can adjust and you can update it and things like that. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Do you have any? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think and I've noticed like there were a lot more. It seems like there used to be more sites. 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It seems like it's kind of all just going to social media. So I one of the things I think it's important to have something like this where people can still go, you're not having to search in a Facebook group to find information.
Right.
You've got it all in one place. So I think there's value in that.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. And it's when it's cataloged, when it's organized the way you do it, it has that feeling. It's like, you're going into archival information,
Right.
and you can search for it, you can find it easily, and like it's just a good reference tool to have. So, I said it already once before, and I'll probably say it again, but I do really appreciate the work you do, and I'm impressed by it.
Yeah,
I think it's great. So.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's been it's not just been me, because I mean, when I started, I didn't know as much as I do now. So we both know Jukka Isäkäinen from Finland, and he basically tapped me on the shoulder when I started doing. It's like, hey, here's, you wrote this post, it's interesting. Have you considered this? Or here's some scans that you could use for your blog. So he's been kind of, just helping me out throughout the whole blog. He's recently started contributing his own articles by himself too. He's an expert on MOTU too, so it's nice to have his input. Oyvind, I'm going to say his name, I'm going to say it wrong, but Oyvind Meisfjord. I've been told how to say it's like the O with the slash through it.
Okay.
There's a certain way to pronounce it, and I forget it because it's not something we use in English.
Right, right.
But he's helped a lot with a lot of images and scans too. So there's been others too. John, there's been a few others who've given me information, scans, and bounce things off of me over the years. So I do like to think of it, this isn't just my show, it's the community has helped out a lot too.
Yeah. And I think that's important to remember, for these kind of fandoms, is that it is very community driven. And if it wasn't for the community doing these, this collaborative work and these contributions, just because of their passion projects, we wouldn't have a lot of the stuff that we know about Masters of the Universe, at least not in any way that's easily accessed.
Yeah.
And so, the work that you do, the work that Jukka does, and the work that, the fan forums have done over the years. I mean, we really do have those places to thank for what we know about Masters of the Universe. So it's pretty phenomenal to see what fans can do.
Yeah. And it's important to me that we don't lose that information, because I can almost see it happening. Because I know there's He-Man.org, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's been they have a bunch of archives. Those have been offline. I know it's very expensive to host that. The forum's offline too for right now.
Right.
But I just sort of see it just becoming mostly the fandom being expressed as just people chatting on forum or on social media, basically, which is great. I do that all the time too, but there has to be some sites where this stuff remains up, because otherwise it gets lost. And, you don't. There are some books out now, but it's not all of it's in the books, so it has to be up there somewhere.
Yeah, and especially when you have something like with Masters of the Universe that has so many differences along the way in terms of the lore and the mythos that has been developed. Just because there's so many different iterations of the franchise. We have the mini comics, we have the toy lines, we have the Filmation cartoon, then we have the 2002 cartoon and the comic line that came out of that. We have the comics run from 2012, and now we have Revelation, and now we have the CGI series for Netflix.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of similarities between the two, but there's also a lot of differences. And so for people that aren't as entrenched in the fandom or in the brand, it can be hard to keep up, and it can be hard to keep things straight.
Yeah, I mean, even my site is huge by now, but I haven't gotten deep. It's still like 90%, 95% vintage. I haven't, even try to delve into, Masterverse. I've done just a few of the Origins. I haven't done much with 2000X or at Classics or anything. So even like everything, all the work that I've done, with like 280 articles, that's just vintage. There could easily be another similar size blog for 2000X or, any, the other properties and adventures, all of that.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any favorite characters?
Yeah. So, and a lot of the times it'll change like as I'm working on something and studying. So like early on, like doing articles about Merman. Merman eventually became a favorite. I wouldn't have called him a favorite when I started, like 10 years ago. But just studying like the Mark Taylor artwork and the early, sort of prototypes and different concepts, he just sort of arose. I just love the look of him and his colors. I do tend to gravitate towards like the early Mark Taylor stuff. Like, I mean, obviously everybody, He-Man and Skeletor,
Sure,
Beastman, Merman, Man-at-Arms, Tila. There's other things. I do sort of, there's that sort of preference I have, sort of the early pre-filmation stuff, but I've also, there's some of the weirder stuff too. I tend to like, I love like Laser Light Skeletor. He's one of my favorite looks for Skeletor. I mean, he's ugly and weird, but I dig him. And same for like the New Adventures, most of the New Adventures evil mutant figures, but especially all the Skeletors, again, just sort of like this weird mix of, machinery and industrial parts fused onto his body. I love that kind of stuff. Big fan of the 84 wave. I've always liked the creature type characters. So like Clawful and Whiplash and Buzz-Off. Basically those characters that are inspired, part animal, part human. Those are the ones that kind of make me smile.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, and I think I'm the same way. I've talked about this in other interviews, and I have my favorites, but certain characters kind of come in and out of popularity for me. Like I think I love He-Man, I love Skeletor, but I always I've always loved Tila.
Yeah.
So she's always one of my favorite characters, and I always make sure that I have her when I buy a new figure. I buy a new He-Man, I buy a new Tila is kind of the first how I dip into it.
Yeah.
But then, there's just so many good characters, and they're so inventive and they're so eye-catching, that it's hard not to fall in love with them. And I wasn't a big fan of the New Adventures cartoon, but the designs for those toys and some of those characters are fantastic. And the one that sticks out to me the most is the Optic.
Optic's great
figure. I mean, it's just a giant eyeball on a weird robot body.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what makes Masters of the Universe something that people can. It's something that makes it kind of evergreen, right?
Yeah.
These designs are kind of classic, and they have a lot of inspiration in the barbarian, fantasy sword and sorcery type of stories, from the 70s and the 80s, but there's that sci-fi element to it as well. And I guess to me, it's just something that I always look at and marvel at how inventive this series or this brand can be.
Yeah, it's almost, it's like this magpie, of grabbing little bits and pieces from so many different areas that it becomes really its own thing. Mm-hmm. It's not just like a rehashed Conan the Barbarian at all. It's,
right.
If you look at Conan, it's, it's very much in one kind of corner of the world. It's, colors are brown and flesh tone, and it's very much, dark, and with, there's not laser blasters, there's not guys with robot faces, and it's Master is kind of a chameleon. It just kind of be whatever you want, but but there's also certainly a color palette to it that's, you've got the sci-fi and the fantasy, but there's also, certain color schemes that seem very, this is Masters Universe. Like if it's, green and orange, or a lot of, sort of complementary primary and secondary colors just kind of match together. And that kind of makes it. So when you're, I'm just going to ask, you mentioned, you look Tila, and it's interesting because there's so many different looks too, because you could have, there's the cross cell art Tila, there's the early prototype Tila, there's, with or without the snake armor, there's the filmation. So you've got, if you're a Tila fan, there's, years and years of kind of different looks that you can choose from too.
Yeah, for sure. I think my personal favorite, I always like the snake armor, just because it's such a cool look, and you don't really see it anywhere else, that kind of a design.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think one of the things I was most excited about, because she kind of, she has many looks, but she's also immediately identifiable by her design, and I think that's, to the credit of the designers and all the work they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was so exciting to me about the Revelation series is to see another new look for her, with her mercenary look and her haircut and things like that. I was like, this is a cool look. I think that's kind of controversial to say in the fandom now, is that's a good look for her, but
right. Yeah.
I was into it. I dug it.
Yeah, no, I thought she looked cool. I mean, I don't have a problem if they want to try a new hairstyle. Like real people, they change their hair.
Yeah, it happens.
And that doesn't take away from the original too. The original still exists. It's just this is one more to a very long series of different looks that she's had. Like the movie look is very different too. She's got the blue eye.
Oh yeah.
Nothing else looks like the movie look. So it's just more the merrier.
Yeah,
as long as it looks good, I'm happy with it.
Exactly. With all the new stuff that's coming out, it kind of feels like we're in the middle of a kind of a Masters of the Universe resurgence, kind of a renaissance era. We've got tons of toys options out there. We've got the 2 new cartoons. Well, we've got, the CG series is now, as we've learned, hasn't been renewed for further seasons, but I mean, it's still there. It's still available to watch. And then we have, Revelation with Revolution coming within the year, if, the reports still hold out. I guess, as a fan, as somebody who's loved this franchise for as long back as I can remember, and for me, it all started back with those Golden Book storybooks.
Oh, yeah,
that was great. That was the first time I was introduced to it. I'd go with my mom to a local craft store, and they had a kids book section, and I'd always pivot right towards those He-Man books, just because the art style and the colors, like we were kind of talking a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to ask is, with this new resurgence and this new push for Masters of the Universe, is there anything that's come out recently that you enjoy, that you like?
In terms of like the media or toys?
Yeah, media, toys, anything that stands out to you.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy both Masterverse and then the CGI show. I felt like the CGI show was a little bit more like I liked the story and writing a little bit better. I felt like it was a little bit like I know there's a lot of controversy on the Masterverse show, or not the Revelation show. My only problem with it was some of it, like some of the jokes in it felt a little forced, like they're a little too ham-fisted trying to do like, here we're going to reference the cheesy 80s thing and then go back to our story. I don't know, some of that took me out of it, but I enjoyed it. The CGI show, I felt a really good story. I don't know, some of the redesigns, like they look good, but it's not necessarily my favorite looks for the character. I know it's I'm not necessarily the audience for it either. It's really kid oriented. Um, I don't know. It's I say that, and then, but I do like, I like a lot of the new adventure stuff, which is also, you know, so redesigned that it's, almost unrecognizable, some of the characters, right?
Right.
So, and that's, the CGI show isn't, too terribly different in that respect. So I guess probably for me, if like we had the look of Revelation with the story of the CGI, I think that'd be like the best of both worlds.
Okay.
But they're both good. I've enjoyed them both.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think I agree with you on the CGI series. I think the storyline is there, the heart of Masters of the Universe is there, and it feels very in line with what's come before and kind of what the central themes are, but the visual designs maybe aren't my favorite.
Right.
Um,
They are
but
inventive.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, very inventive.
And
But
I
they kind of
got,
lean,
oh, sorry, I was just gonna, I got the art book for that recently. It's really fascinating. Some of
yeah,
the
it's a
new
lot of
ones they
fun.
didn't use. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I pivot more towards Revelation just because it's that more traditional design
Yeah.
choices, and
Yeah.
and I liked it because, you know, growing up with it, I always wanted to see where the stories would go that never really played out, like with, again, going back to Tila, I always wanted to see her become the sorceress on the
Yeah.
screen,
Yeah.
and so to see them finally progress that storyline along those themes was great. I was like,
Yeah.
this is kind of what I wanted to see, you know.
Yeah. And she, I don't know, she's always been a strong character. She was a strong character in Filmation,
Hmm.
in a lot of the stories. I always thought it'd be interesting to have, have stories where it's He-Man. You take a break from He-Man because like 99% of the He-Man stories are about He-Man.
Yeah.
So like focusing on Tila is great. I would love like a spin-off show about Zodak. Like what's
Oh, for sure.
what does Zodak get up to? Because he's so mysterious. Like you could make like a Mandalorian type show where he's what are the adventures that he gets into on Eternia, off Eternia. So
Yeah.
I like exploring the other characters too.
I think that's what was fun about the 2012 comic series is it had the initial run of the first 6 issues, and then it went into kind of the main storyline. But within that, it kind of had those one-off shots
Yeah.
where it focused on different characters. I think there's one for Man at Arms, there's one for Evelyn, there's even one for Battle Cat.
Yep.
And just kind of seeing those really focused stories that don't necessarily have a lot to do with the overall storyline itself, but it gives insight into these characters and fleshes them out more than we'd have the chance to. I think that's always a good thing, and
Yeah.
it's something I always appreciate.
Yep. Absolutely. And I took a peek at some of the recent like um, the recent comic that came out with I know there's a Sorceress and Zodak story, there's a Castle Grayskull Man story, so that's
Yeah.
It's nice to see that coming back again too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I did an interview earlier this month with Tim Seeley, and Dark Horse was kind enough to send me the first 3 issues, advanced copies of
Nice.
of those comics, and so yeah, just going through them and just seeing those different. Yeah, I don't know. I like when they focus on kind of the lesser known aspects of Master of the Universe. I always love He-Man. I always love seeing He-Man fight Skeletor, but at the same time, we have so many characters to pick from that it's fun to see what they're up to.
Yeah, that is true.
So
yeah, and then so the toys, the new toys, I haven't really collected the CGI stuff. I have collected mostly for my origin. I do have origins. Mostly what I've focused on there is the figures that either I don't have in vintage, like King Randor, like I picked up an Origins King Randor, or the ones that are based on early concept prototypes. So like the Lords of Power set, that was like number one for me. I like had to get that.
yeah,
And, any of the others sort of. Like if they do, there's the rumored mini comic Manny Faces. I'll definitely pick that up if that comes out. So that's kind of what I've picked up there. In Masterverse, I didn't like Masterverse when it first came out. I couldn't get past a few of the things, like the bodies were just too lanky, like, and then like I didn't like sort of the elbow joints on a lot of the male figures. They sort of leave this big gap to, in service of articulation. They kind of cut the sculpt a little bit too much. Some of the more recent ones, though, I have enjoyed, like Too Bad, the 87 movie Skeletor, the new Stratos. Those actually look really nice. So I've been kind of hot and cold on those. They seem to be getting better, though, as far as from what I'm seeing.
Yeah. For me, I started when they announced the Origins line. I have two boys, and so it was kind of a fun way to introduce them to the toys that I had as a kid. And so the Origins toys I mainly pick up for them to play with, and then the Masterverse, it's kind of a way to flesh out. I know they're not the same, but it's kind of a way to flesh out my classics collection, because when classics was available, through Matty Collector, I was in college, so I was a broke college kid,
right? Yeah.
Newly married, so my wife and I didn't have a budget to necessarily be spending on toys, and so I had to pick and choose which ones I liked, and as a result, missed out on a lot of them. And so Masterverse is kind of a way to kind of flesh that out a little bit, because design wise they match up pretty well.
I do like the I feel like a lot of the She-Ra characters that they've done, those are like the rare ones where I think like that those might even be better than classics, just because I feel like, I don't know, some of the faces you get like are inconsistent. Like the movie He-Man doesn't look good.
Yeah.
But the She-Ra and like the Frosta and Catra, I feel like they look even better than the classic ones.
And I think in general, the female figures have been consistently good.
Yeah.
Especially when compared to the male figures.
Yep.
I do that thing though where I let my bias for the characters influence my purchasing decisions.
Yeah.
I've never been a fan of Frosta, just because as a kid, I didn't like the idea of her trying to claim He-Man over Tila.
Sure.
I was like, no, it's He-Man and Tila. It's not Frosta.
Right. Yep.
So even today, if I find myself, I was like, I don't need Frosta.
Yeah.
She's okay.
Yeah.
So it's just, here I am, older and still operating off of these old biases.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny.
So what's your least favorite vintage or character from whatever line?
Oh, let's see. I think the ones that I just don't really care for are the ones that look the most normal. So like King Randor never really stood out to me, because he was just kind of he was just a king. It didn't really seem that exciting to me. I don't know. I don't really have any that are at the bottom of the barrel for me, but I definitely have some that stand out more.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
So, yeah. I don't know. Do you have any bottom tier characters?
Yeah, like Blast Attack. I've never really liked the way his look. Gwildor, not a huge fan of Gwildor. I don't know. Snouts. I never liked Snoutspout. I kind of like him a little more than I used to, but for some reason, like, it just never appealed that much to me. I don't know. So some of those later vintage guys, like if they look a little bit like, okay, what have we got left? Let's throw the kitchen sink at it.
Yeah. I'm going to correct myself a little bit here. I do have one character that I can't stand, and it's Fisto. I've never liked Fisto.
Oh, really? Yeah, a lot of people like him.
Yeah. I'm definitely in the minority on that one.
Okay.
I like Jitsu just a little bit better, but not by much. I don't know. Maybe I have a bias against large-handed warriors
What
with metal hands.
What about Clawful?
Clawful's cool though because he's a big
Yeah.
lobster.
Yeah,
so,
right. Yeah.
I mean that's cool. Well, yeah, I don't think I have any more questions for you today, Adam.
Yeah.
But just to kind of wrap things up again, thank you for all the work you've done. I know it's a lot of hard work, and I have a little bit of insight into that world of research and finding your sources and making sure everything lines up correctly. And so I tip my hat to you. That's really fantastic what you do. And like I said earlier, it's something that is necessary in this community for people to be able to have this definitive source to look to for answers. So I appreciate all the work you do.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad that people still, they still read it. They still use it as a resource. I use it as a resource just because there's no way to remember everything.
Sure.
Nobody knows everything about He-Man. And even if you did learn everything about He-Man, there's no way to retain it. So
right.
It's nice to have it, somewhere where you can find it again.
Absolutely. So, real quick, before we leave, where can people find you, like on social media and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm probably most active on Twitter. So if you just look, I think it's at Battle Blog. So I'm on there a lot. I've got a Facebook Battle Blog page. I am on Instagram. Instagram's mostly just like, here's, take a look at my toy that I just got. That's mostly what I use that for. But yeah, just look up Battle Blog on any of those, 3, and you'll find me.
Awesome. And we'll include those links in the description for the video so people can easily access them. As for me, I just want to thank everybody for watching and tuning in. If you like what you do, please, follow and subscribe where you can. That would be great. And you can find me on Twitter at Red Pyramid 9 is the handle. But if you just search Dad at Arms, it'll pop up. And then on Instagram, it's just at Dad at Arms. And basically the only thing I do there is I post, toy photos that I take. So, and the occasional custom, I try to do customs every now and then. But, awesome. So yeah, thanks for watching, and thank you, Adam, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, all right, everybody, we'll catch you next time.